Hi everyone, in this lesson we are going to learn how to construct an octagon using DoubleCAD XT. An octagon is an 8-sided polygon that is commonly used in design and engineering for a variety of applications such as in architecture, engineering and constructions. In this video we'll be using the following tools and features in DoubleCAD XT. We'll be making use of the snaps, layers, construction tool, the line tool, the polygon tool, the circle tool, the line length tool, and some other tools as well. By the end of this lesson, you'll be able to construct an octagon in DoubleCAD XT with ease. If you're new to DoubleCAD XT, be sure to check out my previous lesson on how to install and set up the software, as well as my introduction to the basic tools in DoubleCAD XT. Let's get started. Once we are inside of DoubleCAD XT, we're going to start by creating a new canvas, and that's on this little folder here. And then we make sure that it's on normal white metric, and we set that as our default and click OK. Now that we have our canvas, remember this is in the model space, so we're going to just draw this example in model space. And then on options we go first, and we're going to make sure that our settings are set up here by the drawing setup. And we want to make sure that our grid is still at 5mm by 5mm. If you want to display the grid, you can select that. I always say select lines or crosses for the grid layout. And then I'm going to draw in orthographic as this time. But I am going to leave the show grid unticked because I don't want to see the grid while I draw. Then with the advanced grid, everything there I leave. Space units, I'm going to make sure it's metric and make sure everything is millimeters. The precision I'm going to set to 1 only, and I'm going to leave the others as it is here. Now with the layers, we're going to go and create the few layers that we want to use. So firstly, we want to create new layer, and we're going to say there our solid line, and okay. Then we click on new again for the next layer, and we're going to say constructions, and okay. And now you will see here at the top we can immediately go and change the properties of these lines, so that when we select one of these layers, immediately our line is by default set up according to what we've done here in the layers menu. So I'm going to go and change my constructions layers color. Click on that there, and I'm going to show that that must be just gray. So I'm going to select that one. It's going to be a continuous line. We're going to keep it at 0 because all our construction lines are going to be 0. However, with the solid lines, we want to go and change the width of our solid line to be 0.5 for the printout purposes. So this is the best setup, to have everything else at 0 and your solid lines as 0.5 for printing purposes. So now we also want to create a center lines layer. So we're going to go and say new again, click on that, and we're going to go and say center lines. Once we've done that, we're going to say okay. Now that we have our solid line, construction line, center line, and dimensions layer, we have everything that we need. And if we need something else, we can always come back here and create the additional layer if we need it. And let's click OK. So now that we have our canvas, I'm going to start by going to my constructions tool, using the horizontal construction tool, place it anywhere in the middle of the screen. Click and place my horizontal construction line. Then I'm going to use the vertical construction line and go and click that off on the canvas as well. Now I have an intersection as a reference point. So we want to create the octagon that has a height of 80mm. Therefore, because it's an octagon, it's a symmetrical shape. So from the center point, it will be 40mm to the top, the bottom, to the left, and to the right of the center point. Therefore, I'm going to go and I'm going to select the circle tool. So I'm going to select that over here, and then immediately I want to go and place it on the correct constructions layer. So the circle is just the start of the construction that I want to use for determining the octagon. So on the constructions layer, I select that. Now I can see that my constructions layer is active. I'm going to zoom in, and I'm going to make sure my snap is going to snap to that intersection. If this doesn't happen, like we said in the first lesson, just go to the tools and make sure that these 4 selections has been on. So that's the endpoint or vertex, that is your middle point, and that is the intersection. And then this show magnetic point is very important because that's that little pink diamond that you see when you hover over a intersection. Therefore, I'm going to select that, and I'm going to now see that because I'm using the circle tool, I see now that there is a box with the different dimensions as I pull on the distance. So I'm going to type in once, so tap once, and then I'm going to say I want the radius of the circle to be 40 because the total height of the octagon must be 80. And therefore I'm going to just enter, and that will place my circle with a radius of 40 or a diameter of 80 millimeters. Now I notice that my circle's supposed to be a construction circle, which means it must be gray. And here by the settings it still says black. So I'm now click on the drop down, and I'm going to go here to the by layer setting. So if I select that, it will change it to the gray color, which is based on the setup that we've done in the layers window. Now that my circle construction is done, I'm going to go back to this construction tool options, and I'm going to select this one that says construction line at an angle. So I'm going to select that one, and I'm going to go and snap to the center of my intersection. And now I have the option to decide what is the angle at which I have or want to use. So I'm going to say 45 degrees. That is what I want to have the angle at for the construction of the octagon. Please make sure that at the bottom left when you type in that it is in fact 45 degrees before pressing enter. That will give you the option to now immediately escape or to just use the to continue to use the angular tool. So I'm going to draw 45 degrees to the left, so I can go and I can say 90 degrees plus 45 is 135 degrees. So I'm going to go and type in 135 and make sure that it is correct at the bottom left and press enter. Now that I have that, I'm going to escape out of that construction tool, and now I have the setup. So the next thing that I want to do is draw perpendicular to that point there, the reference point where the diagonal construction line or water line touches the outer edge of our construction circle, so that we can draw a 45-degree line at each one of these reference points. So therefore I'm going to go back here to the far left, and there's a construction tool for perpendicular line. So that will then be the one that I'm going to choose. So I'm going to select that. Now with that selected, I'm going to click on the line to which I want to draw perpendicular, and I'm going to select it, and then I'm going to snap to the edge of that circle where the intersection is, and that will give me that 45-degree line that I need. Now I'm going to do the same at this one here, make sure it snaps, and I'm going to do the same one with this and the final one here. Now we just need the horizontal line, so we can now just click on this vertical line and snap it to that top intersection. We can do the same here at this one, and then to the far right over there and the far left over there. So now I have the basic layout for constructions of my octagon. And now what I need to do is go back to the icons here on the far left, and you can either go and draw line by line, or you can use the polyline, which is what I'm going to use in this case, and select that because I want to draw a solid polyline. So once I've selected that, I must just remember to set my layers. So it's on the constructions layer now, so I'm going to click on the drop down, and I'm going to say it must be a solid line, so it's on the solid lines layer, and I'm going to change immediately this to be a default of by layer, so that it has the properties of the layer that we've set up in the layers window. And the reason for this is because we have set our solid line to be a thickness of 0.5. So that's why I want that by layer selected. Now with that set up, I can start anywhere of my intersections for the octagon. So I'm going to start here, and I'm just going to work clockwise and make sure that you actually snap to the intersection of the constructions that you've created and draw line by line. Now in paper or on paper, you will obviously use your set square and your board ruler. But here on CAD, you can see how easy we do that. And look at that. So I see I've not properly snapped there to that point. So what I'm doing to fix that is right click, and I'm going to say here one step back. So that will keep the reference point that I've done first, and then I can go and I can make sure that I snap to that point correctly this time, and then zoom out. Let me just move this down and zoom to that intersection so that I don't make the same mistake. And I'm going to move this around to here, the next reference point, next one, and we want to move to the left now and maybe a little bit up, and then we get that reference point there. And I'm going to move that up again to the next reference point. And once again, like we said in the introduction video, we can go and right click and say either close or finish. So in this case, I'm not going to choose either of that, although they would work, but I'm just going to now click on the last reference point to close off. Now I have the point that I must deselect, so I'm just going to either you could continue to draw, or if you want to escape out of it, you just press the escape key, or you right click and say cancel, whichever you prefer. So I'm just going to press out and escape from there. And now, like we've said in the previous video, if we want to now see the zoom extents, all that we need to do is find the right icon. So in this case, that was set by default, so now we want to select this zoom extents option. So we're going to click on that, and that will bring our octagon on the full canvas. Now let me show you also how to add a dimension to this, because there are a few things here that are important when setting up the dimension. We will still draw the center lines as well. So let's first start by drawing a construction line as a reference. So in CAD, it's very important that you always have reference points. So I'm just going to take it to that distance away from the drawing so that we have enough space to put our dimension there for 80 millimeters. Now what you need to do is, if you don't see this title bar over here, you can just go and right click somewhere in this menu toolbar, and if you do that, you can just go and check whether or not you have your dimensions icon toolbar set. So if that's ticked on, then you will see this icon toolbar where you have the different types of dimension options, and then you say close. And now that we have this, I'm going to use the orthogonal. Now it has its default settings, so what you can do is right click on that and do a pre-setup of your dimensions. So what I want to do is go to format and make sure that it is the arrows that I need to use. I want to use the 4 millimeters there for the size of the arrows. Here by text, I am going to change that to be 4 millimeters. You can make it 5 or whatever your need is. And then what I want to do is, here by the text position, I want to make sure that when I am placing my dimension, that the writing will be above the line. That's very important for our syllabus that you do that. Here by the text gap, I'm going to make sure that I set that to 2 millimeters. That is the distance that the text is from the dimension line. So I want to make sure that there's a clear gap that is visible in my printing. And then I'm going to go to the advanced format. In the advanced format, I want to go and see how far is the offset. So currently it's set by default to 1.5. That is the distance that this leader is going to start away from the drawing. So on where it starts and where it ends, what is the gap between the leader line and the actual outline of my drawing. So I want to make sure that in my printout it's clear. So I'm going to change that offset to 2 millimeters. The rest I'm going to leave as it is for the time being. And that's all the settings that I wanted to preset on my orthogonal dimension option. So I'm going to select the orthogonal dimension tool, and then I'm going to go to this top corner here because I want the leader to measure from there, and I'm going to go and drag it all the way to the bottom to this intersection or this reference point, and I'm going to now go and drag it all the way to the far right to that reference point. So that's why we need these reference points. Otherwise you're gonna be able to click it wherever you like, but I like to have a set reference distance or point, and then I'm going to click off. Now what I notice here is, for our syllabus we do not indicate the dimension with the millimeter units indicated or the decimal either. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change that. So use the selector tool of the arrow, and I'm going to double click on that. You can also just click once. So if you click once and you right click on the yellow dot, you will have your properties and it will bring you to the same window. So what I want to do is I want to go and make sure that my dimensions is set correct. So I don't want to see the unit, so I'm going to deselect here by units and tolerance, that box over there, and I'm going to change my precision to 0 so that we have our dimension showing up only as 80, because by default in our syllabus we only have to write the actual millimeters. We don't have to use the decimal or the millimeters, unless obviously this would be 80.5 millimeters, then we would have used dimension with a decimal of 1. Good. So once we've done all of that, we want to clear all the clutter and all the constructions. But before we do that, we first want to just draw in our center line. So I'm going to use this line tool, and I know I will be able to draw my center lines using the line tool, but there's a better way. I'm going to go back to options and drawing setup, and I'm going to go back to layers, and here where we have center lines, I'm going to change the default preferences of my center line as red, and I'm going to change the line tool there. So I now already know it must be this third one, but I'll show you how to go and see this more clearly. But I'm going to select that third one for the center line tool. Now you can see it a little bit better, and I'm going to say OK. So once we draw, it will now by default, if I am on the center lines layer, after I've selected the line tool, I go to the center lines layer, and I know and check that this is definitely by layer, so that that option is ticked. So now if I go and I draw my center line, I'm just going to start far off, and I'm going to draw it, and I'm going to hold in shift, and I'm going to draw it roughly to there and escape off it. Now you'll see the intensity of that center line is too much, but we'll fix that just now. So I'm going to go and I'm going to select the center line. It's still on the center lines layer, it's by layer, but oh, I forgot that I have to set that one to by layer as well. Now you can set all of these things by layer, and by default the next ones that you select should all have that by layer. But anyway, so for what we do is that's what you change if you see that it doesn't apply the properties. But we're going to deliberately leave this line like this so that I can manually change it and show you how to do that. So here I'm going to draw in that center line, and now immediately you'll see it is a lot better. I'm going to escape out of that, but I'm still not really happy with the spacing. So now I can change both these lines to what I prefer, that is more technically correct. So first let's go and change the length of these lines, because I'm not happy with that extended line. So I'm just up to there, and also again have to select the line length tool. Unfortunately in the free version you have to every time go back to the line length tool when you want to select and change the length of a line, but it's not a problem. So then what we do, we are now happy with the lengths of our center line, which is just past the outer edges of our shape. So what we want to do is firstly change this to the correct line type. So with that selected, using the selector tool, I know that it is on the center layer, it's by layer. There I can go and change it immediately here to the correct line type, or I could say by layer, either one of that. Or I can just go and right click or double click on that yellow dot, it doesn't matter. So let's right click on the yellow dot, go to properties. Now in properties, if you see the pen option here, you will be able to see that type of line a lot better. So it's always, for our curriculum and purposes, the third one from the top when we do center lines. And just as a heads up, if you want to do hidden detail, you will always use this one here for the hidden detail from the top down. So that's the first, second, third, fourth, the fifth line for hidden detail. So the third option for center lines and the fifth option for hidden detail. The same lines are repeated here later down the options, but those are the ones that I've seen works best with printing. So we have selected the correct center line But now we always use the alignment, and we also use the alignment as set when we do hidden detail. So for center lines and hidden detail, or for any other type of line that you might use. Now in the dash scale, I always change that to 0.2 or 0.3, depending on what the result is when I transfer this as a printout to PDF. However, in this case, we're just going to use 0.2. We are sure that it's the center line, and we're going to click on OK. And we're going to click off of it. Now, that looks a lot better. So now I want to select this line, double click on it. In this case, as an additional example, go to pen once again, go all the way up, make sure we've selected the correct center line, the third from the top, and align it always, and we change the dash scale to 0.2. Once we've done that, we say OK, and if we click off that, we see that it is all good and perfect now. Now we are professionals, so what we want to do is clear the clutter and make sure that our presentation of the drawing is proper. So we once again want to go say zoom extents, just to see everything proper and clear on maximum size on the canvas. And then we're going to go to edit, clear, and please do not click on all, because then everything will disappear. We are not going to erase singular construction lines. That is the option that you will choose if you erase singular or select singular construction or water lines to delete. But now we want to get rid of all of the water lines. So we're going to click on all constructions, and that clears our whole canvas from all of those. And that brings us to the end of the construction of an octagon. I hope you have enjoyed this lesson.